Welcome to The Black Secret, quietly empowering the people.
Greetings, everyone. This presentation is called Unlocking Powerful Black History from Ancient African Art in the London Museums. Now, presumably, I could do a similar lecture on the French museums. I could do a similar lecture on the American museums. But for today, I'm going to be sticking to the London museums. So I have to respect the fact that you have entrusted me with your Black history and African heritage education for the next 2 hours. I'll be speaking for less than 1 hour and then we can get into a discussion. So I'm going to make sure that you get value. I'm not going to waste your time talking about nothing. So I'm going to make sure that you get value. Now, I represent an adult education online company, and we teach Black history and African heritage. Our company is called the Black Secret Education Project. And the Black Secret is a fundamental empowerment concept. And you can see our wonderful logo. So if you see a woman doing this and the question mark, that's us. And the logo says, quietly empowering the people. Now, we are offering you a free book showing the new concept of Black history and African heritage. So you can get the free book from https://www.theblacksecret.co.uk. And it says, get free ebook 100 Black history facts. Make sure that you get that free book. All right, so let's get into the session. Our story begins right here. It begins with a German professor. Now, doesn't this German look a little bit like Hitler? This German is called Professor Leo Frobenius, and as far as Europeans are concerned, he is the first person to start Black history, the first person to start African heritage, as far as Europeans are concerned. There were, of course, Black scholars doing it way before him, but Frobenius is where they start the story. And he wrote a book called Histoire de la Civilisation Africaine. And this book came out in French, History of African Civilization. It's a really interesting book. And according to Frobenius, this is what Europeans found in Africa 500 years ago. He says this: when they, that is European sailors, arrived in the Gulf of Guinea and landed at Vida in West Africa, the captains were astonished to find streets well laid out, bordered on either side for several leagues by 2 rows of trees. For days, they traveled through a country of magnificent fields, inhabited by men clad in richly colored garments of their own weaving. Further south, in the kingdom of the Congo, a swarming crowd dressed in silk and velvet, great states well ordered, and down to the most minute details. Powerful rulers, flourishing industries, civilized to the marrow of their bones. And the condition of the countries on the eastern coast, Mozambique, for example, was quite the same. Now, Professor Frobenius said that. It was then translated by an American, Anna Melissa Graves, and it appeared in an English language source. So where was Congo? This was a map drawn by the legendary African-American professor W.E.B. Du Bois, and it shows the ancient African states. Now, the question we need to know is, how did Frobenius know any of this? He wasn't around 500 years ago. How did he know that that grandeur, that splendor is what Europeans found in Africa 500 years ago? How did he know? And what they told those old captains, those chiefs of expeditions, the De Elbes, the Demarche, the Pigafettas, and all the others, what they told is true. It can be verified. In the old Royal Kunstkammer of Dresden, in the Wiedemann collection of Ulm, in many another European curiosity cabinets, one still finds collections of objects from West Africa dating from that epoch. Wonderful plush velvets of an extreme softness, made from the tenderest leaves of a certain banana tree. Stuffs, soft and pliant, brilliant and delicate as silks, woven with well-prepared raffia fiber. Ceremonial javelins, their blades to the very point, inlaid with the finest copper. Bows so graceful and ornamented so beautifully that they would do honor to any museum of arms whatsoever. Calabashes decorated with the most perfect taste, sculpture in ivory and wood, the workmanship of which reveals skill and style, says Professor Frobenius. So what his answer is, if we want to see the greatness of early Africa, we need to look in places like the old Royal Kunstkammer of Dresden. So I checked out what was in the Royal Kunstkammer of Dresden, and this Congolese trumpet was checked in to their archives at some date before 1533. You can see the trumpet is extremely well sculpted. It's made of ivory. It has repeated patterns carved into the body of its surface. Those repeated patterns are the same things that you did in mathematics in high school, are symmetry, reflection, translation. Those techniques is what's being detailed in the decoration of this ivory instrument. Also from the Royal Kunstkammer of Dresden, also from Congo, is this knife case. And the knife case, it's about this big. And this knife case, you can see that we've got 4 people as the decoration. We have the repeated patterns carved in ivory. We've got the 4 caryatids holding up the structure. Is that not exquisite? Now, let's look at what's in some of the museums elsewhere. This is from Sapi, and this was made between 1490 to 1520 AD. Sapi is where Sierra Leone in West Africa is today. This fine piece of sculpted ivory, and it's a salt cellar. And you can compare your salt cellar with this to find out have standards gone up or standards gone down. Compared to this, standards have clearly gone down. Absolutely exquisite. Does art, does craft, does workmanship, does precision, does it get better than this? 1490 to 1520 from Sierra Leone. So how did this piece end up in the British Museum in central London? It's quite possible that it was traded. And nothing sinister. What used to happen in medieval times is people bought their bowls and dishes from China, which is why bowls and dishes are called China. And people would buy their condiments, such as these salt cellars, from West Africa. And so people like Henry VIII would have had condiments like this on his table, and other royal tables would make a point of buying in these West African condiments, and aren't they exquisite? It is believed that there are 800 of these fine ivory salt cellars in European museum collections. And there's more. Here we have a trumpet, again made of ivory. If you look at the repeated patterns, the details, absolutely exquisite. And this ivory instrument came from Sierra Leone, and it's about the same time period as the earlier one that we saw from Congo. Now, from Nupe. Nupe on a modern map is toward the north in Nigeria. And this exquisite textile was made of cotton and was made of silk. And again, it was probably traded. Nupe was one of the centers of West African trade, and textiles across West Africa tended to come from Nupe and elsewhere in Hausaland. There was a time when the Hausas were clothing half of all the population of West Africa. Their clothes were bought by everybody. And this is what the British Museum's website says about this piece. The acquisition register records that these were the robe and cap of the King of Dahomey, given to Vice Admiral Eardley Wilmot by the King of Dahomey between 1863 and 1866. The cloth is likely to be Nupe and the embroidery Hausa. So these textile came from Dahomey. On a modern map, Dahomey is the country called Benin, on a modern map. And the King of Dahomey, how he ended up with these fine Nupe textiles is through trade. As I've said, Hausaland used to clothe half of all of West Africa. And so it would be no surprise that the King of Dahomey, the modern country of Benin, would have been wearing Hausa textiles and could therefore give this textile away as a gift to Vice Admiral Eardley Wilmot. These Yoruba pieces were also probably traded. Yoruba land is again in the Nigeria region, and this was a ewer or a jug, and it could have been made at some point between the 16th century, which is 1500 and something, to the 19th century, 1800 and something, and it was exquisitely made of ivory and iron. Is that not exquisite? Now, I've read several books on African history. I've written several books. I've never seen this in any of the books, and I think perhaps it needs to be there. So how did this piece from the Yoruba city of Owo, how did it end up in the British Museum? Again, it was probably a trade piece that some European bought and then took back to Europe. Again, probably traded. This was an armlet. Again, it's from Yoruba land on a modern map, Western Nigeria, made at some point between the 17th to the 19th century. 17th century is 1600 and something, to the 19th century, 1800 and something. And is that not exquisite? And does not this show the evidence of the high civilization in Africa that Professor Frobenius was talking about? Now, this was from the Benin Empire. Ancient Benin is not the same country as modern Benin. Ancient Benin is Nigeria region. Modern Benin is the ancient Dahomey. So the Benin Empire was also making fine ivory pieces. And again, these are salt cellars, and they were made at some point between 1525 and 1600. And here's another one, absolutely exquisite. Now, an African scholar, R.E.G. Armatoe, wrote a book called The Golden Age of West African Civilization. And in this book, he studied these art pieces, and by studying them, he was going to use them as an intellectual basis to write West Africa's golden age. And here's another one of these exquisite pieces. This is an ivory spoon. And this is what R.E.G. Armatoe wrote. These art treasures, which formed the delight and wonder of aesthetes for 500 years, are still to be seen in the National Museum at Copenhagen. Duke Ferdinand Albert I of Brunswick-Lüneburg observed numerous treasures from West Africa, and his collections may be studied. Before the collections of the Dauphin of France and of the princes of Europe, whether they be calabashes, garments, gold and silver, of copper or bronze, bejeweled bows and arrows, treasure boxes or wigs, of carved wooden figures, terracotta or bronze heads, or of reliefs from mural decorations of African homes, the modern scholar stands in outraged awe, says R.E.G. Armatoe. And here's another one of those exquisite spoons. Is that not incredible? Did we know that 16th century West Africans had spoons like that? However, most Benin art entered Europe in other ways. Again, ancient Benin is the Nigeria region. And you can see here how Benin art entered Europe. Essentially, the art pieces were stolen. And what you are seeing here is the devastation of the Grand Palace of the Oba of Benin. And that palace has been stormed, and the art pieces are all on the floor, about to be collected and taken to Europe. So the British conquered Benin in 1897. Here we have an image. The caption says, Lieutenant Robinson defending the rear guard in the final advance on Benin City. So they are about to seize Benin in 1897, conquer it, and turn it into southern Nigeria. Now, these are the Benin bronze wall plaques. They're in the British Museum, and these were made of bronze. They're not wooden, they're made of bronze, made using a very sophisticated metallurgical technique. Some people say that they're not actually bronze, they're made of brass. And there's a slight metallurgical difference between bronze and brass. Now, how these pieces got there is they were seized by British troops having stormed the Oba of Benin's palace in 1897. Let's get a detail. Now, is that not absolutely exquisite? Raised art in bronze or brass. Absolutely exquisite. So there is Benin on our map, the southern part of modern Nigeria. And here we see some more bronze or brass work. That is a leopard. It's actually a water container in the shape of a leopard. And here we have a brass or bronze cockerel. Is this not absolutely amazing? This art could stand up to anything produced by anybody in any other part of the medieval world. And there's more. This piece is thought to represent a trader on horseback, and we're going to turn it around so it's facing you. And that trader is thought to be somebody coming in from the Sahara Desert. It could be a Hausa being depicted. It could be a Fulani being depicted. Here we see another one, a musician. And the musician is playing the flute. And he's got a wraparound kilt. And from a different angle, the same flautist. Is this not exquisite? 16th century art. Now, the most famous Benin piece is a set of portraits of one of the rulers of Benin, Queen Mother Idia. And these portraits were made somewhere between 1505 and 1550. And again, they're made of metal, and you can see that the face has been given semi-geometric shapes, almost cubist type of shapes. Amazing. Now, this is why Nigeria, unfortunately, is unlikely to get this material back. Here we have a piece that's in the British Museum. And here we have an article, a 2010 article in a London newspaper. And the article says, out of Africa, a 16th century ivory mask looted by the British during an invasion of Benin in West Africa in 1897 is set to go for £5 million at auction at Sotheby's in London. So this 16th century piece has a reserve price put on it of £5 million. And that's not today's money, that's 2010. So here's your task. This is what I'd like you to do. discuss the following questions. Why are these pieces worth so much? And how did their value become so high? If you have an answer, put it in the chat, write it in the chat, and then perhaps Danny or George or Chuck can read to me what's in the chat. I'm going to give you 1 minute to contribute to something in the chat, starting from now.
Yeah, I'm on it.
Thank you very much. You have 50 seconds.
Why is it worth so much? And how did the value become so high? Okay, we've got Elaine who says people are waking up. Whoops. People are waking up to their beauty and skill. We have Justina, skilled stolen art dating back to many centuries. We have Naomi says one of a kind. Josephine, because they are unique pieces which are very difficult to recreate. Therefore, their value has increased even more because of the age of them, as they are valuable antiques which tell a story in history. Another response from Elaine, the technique used meant destroying the mold. June Francis, to stop the government in Benin getting it back as they won't pay that much.
All very powerful answers. Now, what I'm going to do is give you an analysis of this, and the analysis is going to come from an African-American intellectual called George Sabira. He wrote a book called Black Folks' Guide to Making Big Money in America. How much are you worth? Now, here's the thing. According to George Sabira, this is how it works, right? Sabira explains that there's a measure of how much an individual is worth called equity or net worth. Equity is how much do you own minus how much do you owe. So what assets do the rich own? They tend to own things like art, which is entirely relevant to our discussion right now. Property, stocks, coins, stamps, furniture, etc., all calculated at resale value. So they're not calculated at the price that you bought them at. They are calculated at the price that you can sell them at today at resale value. And this figure is not the same every year. It tends to go up, it tends to go up, it tends to go up. And why does it go up? There's this concept called the power of compounding. And the power of compounding is if something goes up by 10% every year in value, that 10% figure becomes a bigger and bigger and bigger gap year on year on year. So compounding, Albert Einstein is alleged to have said that compounding is the 8th wonder of the world. Supposing asset values rise at the rate of 10% per year, how would this affect a person with £100,000 worth of assets or somebody with £200,000 worth of assets? Year one, person A is worth £100,000, person B is worth £200,000. But at 10% growth, by the time we get to year two, our first person is worth £110,000, our second person is worth £220,000. Notice that the value of one portfolio has gone up by 10,000, the other portfolio has gone up by 20,000, twice that figure. Year three, that becomes 121,000 for one person, 242,000 for the second person. Year four, 133,100 for the first person, 266,200 for our second person. Year five, the first person's wealth is now worth £146,410. Our second person, their wealth is now worth £292,820. So notice that 10% increase means ever increasing increments of value each year. Now, what work did these asset holders do to increase these values? Nothing. They just held on to things of value, and the value goes up and up and up, which means that £100,000 worth of assets could be, at the end of 5 years, and the asset increases 10% per year, could be revalued at £146,410 at the end of 5 years, an increase in over £46,000. But the person that had more, their value has gone up £92,820, more than £92,000 for doing no work. So equity, how much do you own minus how much do you owe? Where are you at? So why does net worth matter? This is what George Sabira says. As I'm writing this book, gold is going absolutely crazy, berserk. Around Thanksgiving 1979, gold was worth maybe $425 an ounce. And by the week after New Year's, it was about $610 an ounce. Now, let's say I'm wealthy and have a good income, and somebody calls me on November 15th and says, hey, Sabira, go buy some gold. It's going to go through the roof in a couple of months. Now, you can't buy gold like you do penny candy. You can't go to a precious metal broker and say, 1 ounce of gold, please. You've got to buy a block of gold to make it worth anybody's effort. But first I go to the bank and borrow some money. The banker says, I see here you make £100,000 per year. Your house is worth £150,000. But you only owe £46,000 on it. How much would you like to borrow? I say 80,000. Fine, Mr. Sabira. I'll draw the papers up this afternoon and you can come in tomorrow and pick up the check. I take the check to the gold dealer and say, I want $80,000 in gold. Yes, sir, the dealer says. Here is your certificate certifying your purchase of 188 ounces of gold. You see, 188 ounces at $425 per ounce comes to 80,000. Now, between Thanksgiving and New Year's, I do what everybody else does that time of year. I watch football, drink eggnog, buy holiday presents, and kiss women under the mistletoe and other nice places. After New Year's Day's over and gone, I look at the paper and see that in those 45 days, my 188 ounces of gold is now worth over $114,000. That, my friend, is $34,000 in gross profit in a month and a half time. Now, what work did I do? What money did I spend? Now do you see why the wealthy borrow big sums of money? You have to be worth it to borrow it. You've got to invest it to make more, and it all takes very little energy, either physically or mentally. Now, how much did you make between Thanksgiving and New Year's? So here's the lesson. You have to be worth it to borrow it. So anyone sitting on a Benin ivory mask is sitting on 2010's money, £5 million. And that's just one mask. So if there's 2 masks, we can assume £10 million in 2010 money. And then we compound 2010 money to 2024 money, that becomes a much bigger figure. And you then multiply that by the hundreds and thousands of Benin pieces that are in London, in Paris, in Stuttgart, in Berlin. You then multiply that by the fact that these pieces have been around since the 16th century or more, and therefore the compounding over hundreds and hundreds of years. And that is why in 2010, they were worth £5 million each. Get it? And this, by the way, is why Nigeria is not going to get these pieces back. Sorry to say. Horrible things occurred in Makdala, Ethiopia, 1868. Horrible things. British troops moved in, killed people, and stole artifacts. So where was this? Magdala is where Ethiopia is today. It's the Kingdom of Abyssinia, as it was called then, the Empire of Abyssinia. And what happened? According to Professor Richard Pankhurst, Pankhurst is related to the great suffragette Emmeline Pankhurst. Great Britain, the largest number of Ethiopian manuscripts abroad, about 850, are in the United Kingdom. A little less than half were looted by the Magdala expedition of 1867-1868. Their return is currently demanded by the Ethiopian organization Afromet. The principal depositories of Ethiopian manuscripts are in the British Library, which at my last count had 598 manuscripts. And then he gives you a list of all the other places that have stolen Ethiopian material. This Ethiopia 18th century silver, is that not exquisite? And this is what the British Museum says. Find spot, found acquired in Magdala. Acquired? Is this what they're calling acquired? Can you see that that is looting? That is theft. That is piracy. It is not acquired, but that's what the British Museum says. And then you've got these 19th century copper pieces. Again, are they not absolutely exquisite? And this ended up in the Victorian Albert Museum in central West London. And the museum, from the museum website, the V&A Museum, says, this Ethiopian dress belonged to Queen Terenesh, or Empress Wube, the second wife of Emperor Tewodros II. The queen died about a month after the 1868 siege of Magdala, while being escorted by the British Army to her home province. Her possessions were then sent to England. Did she give permission for her possessions to be sent to England? To the Secretary of State for India, who gave this garment to the Victorian Albert Museum in 1869. Items looted during the siege were also given to the museum. So they've made it clear. They took a dead queen's material, they seized it, and they sent it to England. Now, the only thing that we're interested in here is this gives us some idea of how early Africans used to dress. And we can add this to what the West Africans were wearing. I showed you an example from Nupe, and here we have another example, this time from the other side of Africa, East Africa. Now, another piece that ended up in London, this was a 1740 three-tiered golden crown belonging to Empress Mentewab of Ethiopia. Is this not exquisite? Hope people are enjoying the workmanship, because when people talk about Africa, this is not the stuff they talk about. Now, other pieces were acquired in other ways, including anthropological plunder. And here you see this chainmail. So yes, early Africans had chainmail. The idea of a mounted knight in his shining armor, we were doing that in Africa too. And this example is from Nigeria. And it says 1 and 2 were given by F. O'Donnell Burke and described in the register as a suit of armor obtained in the Ningi district south of Kano, North Nigeria. Notice the use of the word obtained. Obtain my backside. So you can see then that the people who owned that were forced to give it up, and it ended up in the British Museum. And then we've got archaeological plunder. Archaeological plunder is where they find an artifact, they dig it up, and they decide we're taking this to Europe. And this is a very famous sculpture. Some people think it could be 12th century, and it represents an Oni in the city of Ife, Yorubaland, Nigeria. Right now, but the British Museum made replicas of other Yoruba pieces in 1947 and 1948. These exquisite replicas means that there is a way that Europe could atone for the theft of these artifacts. They can make replicas, keep the replicas, and then, if they are people of goodwill and uprightness, return the originals to Africa. And I was asked my opinion on what should happen to looted pieces. And this is what was said on the news.
Well, now, when British forces sacked Benin City back in 1897, they returned to London not just with the revenge they were seeking for a massacre, but a hoard of stolen treasures, well, now spread across Europe and America in private and public collections. The Nigerian government has begun requesting the return of the so-called Benin bronzes. A Cambridge college will become the first British institution to officially repatriate their artefact, a bronze cockerel. And it raises questions for other organisations now in possession of the looted artefacts. Shingi Marurike reports.
A joyful sound to mark a moment in history. After more than a century, this sacred African artifact is returning home. It is one of the Benin bronzes, a collection of sculptures stolen from Nigeria in 1897 by British soldiers before being placed in Cambridge. Now, Jesus College has put pen to paper on a historic agreement, becoming the first place to return one.
I think we've now begun to realise how historic it is. I mean, the outpouring of contacts and just people just saying this is fantastic. Requests to say, look, can you please live stream the ceremony? I hope we do it justice today. It is a very historic day.
Events like today's will pile the pressure on other institutions. The British Museum holds hundreds of items that also come from the Kingdom of Benin, but has not yet committed to returning them. Museums in Europe have already begun deciding how they will face their imperial pasts. This exhibition is the last time these treasures will be displayed in France, while Germany became the first country to agree to hand back their bronzes earlier this year. Some historians are suggesting solutions.
Institutions with the resources, such as the British Museum, should commission replicas of the pieces. They certainly have the skills and they have the wealth to do it. And then keep the replicas here and then return the original pieces to Nigeria.
Today is much more than a ceremony. It's more symbolic, it's more significant, and it's bigger than all of us here. It goes back centuries.
People here have spent years picturing today's milestone. Passionate speeches like this one are a reminder they see this ceremony as part of something bigger. For African countries trying to recover works pillaged by European explorers and colonists, this handover is just the start. Shingi Marike, Sky News.
Okay, final problem. When archaeologists dig up new information but hide it away in European institutions. Now, many people who are new to African history, I'm assuming that some of you on this call, you are new to African history. They want to know the answer to the following question. Did Africans make use of the wheel? Did Africans use textiles? Did Africans write? Did Africans have great architecture? And I'm going to show you what happens when archaeologists dig up new information but hide it away. So we're going to look at the region that we would today call Sudan. And in the ancient times, this region was called Kush. And in medieval times, this region had three kingdoms, Nobadia, Makuria, and Alwa. And we're going to look at artifacts from these places. So it's Sudan in the ancient times, Sudan in medieval times. Cups, 1st century AD. The British Museum website says, angular wheel-made cup in a typical Meroitic style with flat base, low angular shoulder, and straight walls with direct rim. Angular wheel-made cups. In other words, made on a potter's wheel. And 1st century AD means that these pieces are 2,000 years old, going all the way back to the ancient world. Here we've got cups, 1st and 2nd centuries AD. The British Museum website says, wheel-made ceramic beaker, wheel-made, again, made on a potter's wheel. 1st and 2nd centuries, that means some of these are 2,000 years old, some of these are 1,900 years old. Now, in context, the British Museum produced a book called The Kingdom of Kush. And on page 172, we have wheeled vehicles. I'm going to blow that up so that you can see it. And then the pictures have been numbered 1, 2, 3, and 4. And then we are told that 1, 2, and 4 is coming from a scholar called Griffith, 1922. And number 3 is coming from Lepsius, 1849 to 1859. That means if you visit the Temple of Amun in Sanam, or you visit Pyramid number 6 in Meroe, those aren't there anymore. But when Griffiths saw this stuff in 1922, he was able to document it. And when Lepsius saw this stuff in 1849 to 1859, he was able to document it. Wheeled vehicles in Sudan. And these wheeled vehicles, we're going back 2,700 years old, 700 BC for these wheeled vehicles. And if you look at number 1, we can infer that that would be a 6-wheeled vehicle. If we look at number 3, doesn't that look like, almost like a locomotive, doesn't it? So a lot of people have this idea, but you Africans didn't have the wheel. Here's the evidence. What about textiles? What do you think this artifact is? Well, the British Museum website says cloth, perhaps from a curtain, printed in red and purple brown on an undyed cotton ground. 13th to 14th centuries. 13th century is 1200 and something. 14th century is 1300 and something. During this time period, Africans in Sudan had curtains. Here we've got 2 belts, possibly 9th or 10th centuries. Now they're both in bad shape, but if you look at the detail of that belt buckle, doesn't it look just like a modern belt buckle? Despite being 9th century, which is 800 and something AD, or 10th century, 900 and something AD, these are more than 1,000 years old. And if you look at the second belt, you can see the quality of the loops and so on. And when we blow those loops up, you can see that there's an Ankh design on those loops. Is that not exquisite? So what's this? Okay, if people think they know what that is, put it in the chat and perhaps someone can read it to me what that is.
Okay, let's see what the people are saying. All right. Okay, we've got tapestry from Dawn. We've got Raw, thinks it might be a floor mat. June.
Correct, it's a floor mat. It's a floor mat.
Carpet, rug.
Woolen rug.
Yeah.
With the designs of trees beneath arcade. Now check out the date. 5th to 6th centuries AD. 5th century means 400 and something AD. 6th century means 500 and something AD. Did we know that early African civilizations had woolen rugs with these intricate designs? Did we know this? What about this? This is a carpet. This is what the website says. Large piece from an orange, green, and red woolen carpet enclosed in a glazed wooden frame, 207 times 147 centimeters. So that's the bit that survived. And this is mid-4th century, which means round about 350 AD, to mid-6th century, 550 AD. Are you feeling this? Fragments of cushion covers, 1st century to 5th centuries AD. So these are between 2,000 years old and 1,500 years old. And doesn't the first one look kind of psychedelic and kind of 1960s? And the second one has got the same kinds of patterns that cushion covers have today, despite being 1,500 years old. Are we feeling this? Now, could we compare these to cushion covers today? Yes. One looks exactly as a cushion cover looks. One looks like one that would have come out of the psychedelic 1960s. A Miracle of St. Menas and a Sermon on the Canons of Nicaea, 1053 AD. This is an African book from Sudan, written in 1053 AD, 1053 AD paper, and it's in the British Library Manuscript Collection 6805. With the exception of me, nobody writing African history books has even reproduced this image. And the other images that I've shown you, none of those pieces are in any of the books. Trust me on that one. Capital from Pharas Cathedral, 707 AD, British Museum, catalogue number EA1636. It's a capital, part of a column. Now, what's Pharas Cathedral? It's a cathedral that the Sudanese built in 707 AD. When these photographs were taken, the cathedral is in poor ruins, still impressive. And then what happened was the Polish scholars, they did a reconstruction, because most of the bits are now actually in Poland. Some of them are in London, some of them are elsewhere. And they reconstructed what the cathedral looked like. And this is the lower tier, and that is the upper tier. Now, can you see that the upper tier has got a dome and a cross? That is how Africans from Sudan, that is how they were going on 707 AD. Now, for comparison, Pharas, 707 AD, London, 1675 AD. The London monument, of course, is St. Paul's Cathedral. Now, remember this, the Black Secret Education Project, where we are quietly empowering the people. Now, have you claimed your free book yet? Earlier on in the session, I said we are giving away a free book. Claim it. https://www.theblacksecret.co.uk. Get free ebook 100 Black History Facts. Yep, the opportunity's still there. Get it. But there's more. As we wrap up, would you like to learn more Black history and African heritage? This seminar, this class that we've done today, is the kind of thing that I teach in general. We have 55 hours of Black history content, and we have 25 hours of wealth and entrepreneurial content available online. Go to our site, www.theblacksecret.co.uk, and subscribe. It is just $47 per month, £35 per month. So what do you get for $47? What do you get for £35 per month? These are the classes we have available. You can see that we have loads of classes on medieval African history. ancient Ghana, medieval Mali, the Songhai Empire, the civilization of the Moors, the ancient and medieval history of Nigeria, the kingdoms of Nubia, the South African civilizations, etc., etc., etc. And we have a bonus class called the African Origin of the Secret. So these classes, I think there's 12 of them, are already live. Then we have the ancient period classes, Africa and the Origin of Humanity. Who were the ancient Egyptians? Old Kingdom Egypt, Middle Kingdom Egypt, Black people in the history of Asia, Hannibal and Carthage and Numidia, etc., etc., etc. Those classes are available. Then we have the modern period. The rise and fall of Palmares, a Black civilization in Brazil. The colonization of Africa and the Pan-African movement, prominent Blacks of the last 500 years, the African-American civil rights struggle, the rise and fall of Black Wall Street, 70 years of modern Black British civil rights, etc., etc., etc. And then our bonus class was based on the film The Woman King, and we're going to talk about the Dahomey Kingdom and the elite Agojie warriors. And then we have more classes available. We have a whole module called Mastery of Wealth, where we're going to teach people the skills to become entrepreneurial. Now, did I say something about $47? Did you know we've got a special offer? And the special offer is we are offering people a 48% discount. And so for a limited time, you can actually get our content and lock in the price at $23 per calendar month or £18 per calendar month. All the classes are filmed in a London classroom. The classes are all online, just like this class. You can get the content, it's all online. You can watch it at your convenience. If you want to watch it straight away, you can watch it straight away. If you want to watch it at 10:30 in the morning, 6 p.m., midnight, 2 o'clock in the morning, 2:35 in the morning, you can watch the content at your convenience. And you can start each class and stop it at your own convenience. If you can only find 10 minutes to commit to your studies, do 10 minutes, freeze it, come back to it, and the computer will remember which bit of the class you got to and start from there. You have full access to the lecture notes. As we've said, you've got something like 30 odd classes of history live, 14 classes of wealth education live, 80 hours worth of content. And that's me, the Black Secret Education Project. We are quietly empowering the people. If you want more information, check out our website, www.theblacksecret.co.uk. Thank you very much. I'm quite happy to take questions and deal with any discussions.
Yes. Can you hear me? This is Chuck Penn.
Yes, sir. How are you doing?
First of all, let me thank you, brother, for all that you've done. I am a walking testimonial to the Black Secret. I signed up for it. I cannot give you any accolade that would be worthy of the value of this course. I have a freshman, my niece is a freshman at college. She's taking an African-American studies course right now. I said, look, if you want to know more than your professor, you need to check out the Black Secret. I have went through probably the entire array of courses, both the ancient, the medieval, and on up to current day. And I go back to it. For example, Netflix right now is being criticized because some folks in Tunisia are taking exception with the notion that Hannibal was a Black African. The same thing was true when the Cleopatra piece was on. And so it prompted me to go back and revisit what this man has put together, what this organization has put together, and revisit that information. It is absolutely invaluable. And I mean, like I said, I can't sing the praises, more for the Black Secret and what Robin has put together. Even his book is outstanding. So if there's any people that are questioning the value of it, particularly since he is graciously reducing the value of it, I'd pounce right on it because it is information that you're not going to get accumulated like that in one spot. And so I'm on board 100%.
Thank you very much, sir.
You're most welcome.
Okay, any questions? We're in a Q&A now. So any questions, any observations, any responses to what Robin has shared with us, please put it in the chat. You can also unmute and verbalize.
Yeah, we do have some questions in the chat. And this one's from Shola about the wealth mastery course. Essentially, no, it's not free in that sense. It is a part of the educational program that we're provided. So if you subscribe to the Black Secret, then you get it as the 4th module. The wealth course will be available to subscribe to in its own right for a smaller price. That's not yet been made accessible, but if you do join the Black Secret today at the discounted price, you will have access to all of the history modules as well as the wealth mastery module as well. So it's basically you subscribe once, you get all of the current content that's available, which is the 4 modules, and every subsequent future module. Because it's not just going to be that, we're going to be building and adding more and more as time goes on. We're working on modules 5 and 6. And so in a few months' time, they will be accessible and available for exactly the same price. But if you just want to do the Wealth Mastery course, there'll be an opportunity for you to subscribe to that, but that has to be built into the system first. And so that's where we're at with that. Do we have any questions on the information, the incredible information that
I do.
We have a question from Gabby. Gabby, I think you sent the question to me when maybe you intended to put it in the general to everyone. Were the salt sellers commissioned by or for the very wealthy?
Both happened. Both happened. We know that some of them were definitely commissioned because some of them have got Europeans on them. But we know that if you went into a West African market, you could buy those because they were the masses in West Africa were using them as well.
Thank you. Another question from Patrick. Do you know of the tartan that was found in Glen Affrique in Scotland marshes? That is oldest tartan that was found and is similar to the rug that you showed, red, yellow, and green.
I know nothing about this. All I would say, Patrick, is if you can send us a link where we could do some reading about this. And thanks for that information. I did not know of this similarity.
Next question from Rawl. Can you explain why, oh, why did Ghana accept such an offer? Is the new buzzword loaned back to save face by the teeth saying sorry?
In it. Yeah, I mean, basically, Ghana shouldn't accept that. But I suppose I would say that, wouldn't I? Everyone's got to make whatever compromises they want to make. But it is a cheek to teeth your stuff and then try and loan it back to you. That is taking the mickey. That's taking the mickey.
Yeah, if I could just add to that, being Ghanaian myself, I don't like that decision at all, but we have to remember that these are early days and that these items should be returned back. And as Robin has said, because they've created this value system, if they hadn't stolen them in the first place, these items, despite their exquisite nature, would not be given those sort of like prices. It's because they're owned by Europeans. Now, because of that, they are unlikely to be given back, like Robin has said. I just see this as a first step. This is the first part of, you could say, overall reparations, which are owed to Black people in the diaspora and everywhere else. And it's not just even Black people in terms of like the artifacts, you know, even other European civilizations had their stuff stolen from them. The Greeks are upset. Many other people are upset as well. This is just the first step. This is not the end of the position. Ghana has made a play. I don't agree with it, but it doesn't mean that in future things can't change. We need to put the pressure on them constantly because this is wrong. I know Chuck wanted to come in very quickly. I know that there are more questions, but Chuck, would you like to come in and ask your questions? Because I know you've got some time limits as well. If Chuck is there. Okay.
Yes, I'm here. I'm sorry.
No problems.
Are there any other countries you had mentioned, the Nigerian situation? Are there any other African nations that are, you know, asking or demanding these Europeans give back the stolen artifacts that they have taken from us? And is there any that show any promise?
Yeah, let me answer that question. I was at the Accra Reparations Conference in Ghana in the end of 2023. And the official position of all the African governments is they want their stuff back. So to give some specific examples, Ethiopia is still petitioning to get the Magdala material returned. Also, while an Ethiopian prince was seized and brought to England and died here, they want his remains back. And you can multiply it by country, by country, by country. The African countries are pretty much unified on wanting to get their wealth back. And then when you realize the value of the wealth because of the compounding and so on and so forth, they are on the same page as far as that is concerned. At the reparations conference, one of the themes was getting their stolen treasures back.
I suspect that a lot of us in the diaspora and throughout the world don't really know. I mean, I think that this kind of information being exposed to the masses will raise the level of awareness where I'm not even sure that the stolen artifacts part is really front and center in the mindset of many of our people. So I suspect that what we can do is get this powerful information out that you just gave us so people can become aware of that aspect of it, because even the reparations movement here in the United States, at least, I don't think is really focused that much on the stolen African artifacts of antiquity and more on just the monetary redress part of it.
True, and I think you're right, and I'm very glad that we managed to put this session together to raise these kinds of issues.
Okay, there's a couple of questions which in the chat which I think are linked, so I'll just read them out. Sarah has asked, could you outline some of the reasons that Western institutions give for not returning contested objects to their indigenous peoples? She says, is it as simple as notional value? And then there's a question from Andrew who asks, do you know what reason the British government are giving for not returning African items back? Items that were stolen, items were stolen from the British Museum not too long, so why should we believe the African items, artifacts are safe in that museum?
Well said. Yeah, so one of the arguments that they use is you Black people are backward, you Black people are primitive, and therefore you can't look after your artifacts, even though Africans have held on to their artifacts for thousands and thousands of years. So there's that type of argument, but the argument is weak, the argument is silly. The reason why I introduced to you the concept of net worth and the concept of asset values is so that you understand that those African pieces are worth millions. One piece is worth multiple millions. And when you own artifacts that are worth millions, it increases your net worth to billions. And the Western institutions that have these artifacts, they're worth billions. They can borrow on billions. They can then create wealth on the billions. And that's the real reason why they don't want to give these pieces back.
Yeah, well said, Robin. Absolutely. That's what it's all about from their point of view. There was another question from Dawn Peller. And I think you can bring some clarity to this because you did mention that you were at the conference, and some people are getting confused because there was a further conference after that which was cancelled. And she says, I thought the president of Ghana cancelled that conference. I saw furore about it. Could you shed some light and clarity on that because you were at the conference, the original one?
Yes, I can spread some light and clarity on it. Don't mix up two different conferences. Don't mix up two different conferences. The first conference was the Accra Reparations Conference 2023. I believe it's the second time that it was held in Ghana. And you had the president of Ghana, the ruler of Burundi, the ruler of Togo. You had a feed coming in over Zoom with the ruler of Barbados. And it was a very, very powerful event, and a lot of positivity came out of it. Dr. Julius Garvey was also there. Belle Ribeiro Addy, the MP in South London, she was there. I accompanied her, so did Onikachi Wambu, and so did some other people. Yeah, Jacqueline McKenzie and so on. The conference you're talking about that was cancelled is one that was supposed to have taken place, I think, a week ago to 2 weeks ago. And that one was a more political conference. And yeah, the president of Ghana got scared that people were plotting independently of him and decided to shut it down. I don't think that was the wisest act for the president to have taken. But I think it was frightened of a new power rising that you don't have under your control, unfortunately.
Okay. Patrick Lard has put in a link to the Guardian's article on the tartan that he mentioned earlier on, called The Oldest Known Scottish Tartan Piece, Glen Affric. Pete Bog reacted. So people
can I ask a question? And maybe Patrick can explain this. How did it get this name, Glen Affric? Because that word is looking suspiciously like the word Africa.
Would you like to unmute, Patrick? Okay, perhaps we can come back to that if Patrick's not ready to unmute yet.
But I see that we are grateful for that link. So thank you very much anyway. Yeah, we're grateful.
Absolutely, absolutely. I see Shola has a hand up. Oh, sorry.
Sorry,
yes,
I just wanted to see, because I read that article earlier on in the week, because I was interested to know for some time now if there was a link between tartan and the kente fabric. And this was obviously the closest information that I had. So the name Glen Affric, my understanding is that these were Ethiopian Africans who were brought over as slaves to Scotland, and they escaped to the Hebrides, to the Outer Hebrides Islands, and they said that it was very similar to the highlands. It reminded them of the highlands of Ethiopia. And it became known as, it was a group of them, and it became known locally as Glen Affric. But there was nothing written about it. It's kind of like one of those hidden, lost stories that wasn't documented. and I can't remember what. I would need to read the article to find out what it is that they found that led them to the whole story. But yeah, that's kind of like how it got locally was called Glen Afrique, because did I explain it well?
That's powerful information.
I
I knew none of this, so thank you very, very much. If at some point you can drop in a book or something where you came across this stuff, that would be really, really helpful.
Also, as well, could I ask on the back of that, do you know the time period when these Ethiopian slaves came over to Scotland? Did it mention that? Is there any information on the specific time periods?
Yeah, it did, but I can't remember what it was. I think it was like 16th, 17th century.
I see.
The article is saying 1500s, 1600s, which ties up. It's approximately the same time period.
Sorry, Shola's had her hand up for a while.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay, great. Question I'd like to ask, is this session going to be, is it being recorded and is it going to be added to the Black Secret website?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay, I didn't know when that's what
sorry, yes.
Okay.
Good.
Thank you. That's it.
Respect, sir.
Okay, Sarah's posted a link in the chat to the Afrique.
Yeah, it's got a short history there, and it says that a Roman emperor who built the beginnings of an estate there in the 2nd and 3rd century AD kind of ordered African slaves to be delivered to him. So there's only a short piece in that link.
Wait to read that. Thank you for sharing. Okay, a few more questions. Has this exquisite workmanship been lost to antiquity, or are there young African artisans with those ancestral skills?
Let me answer that question. There are all kinds of brilliance coming out of Africa, coming out of the diaspora with the young people. But many of the young people don't know this history and heritage that we're talking about. And why the young people don't know? Because the old people don't know. Why do the old people don't know? Because they haven't studied this stuff. They haven't come across this information. So people can still have skills, but not coming out of a tradition, because if you don't know what that tradition is, you can't develop that tradition. Our job is to make everybody aware of the tradition so that we can connect to it.
If I could just add to that, Robin's showing you artifacts from the British Museum. I also do tours of the African artifacts in the British Museum. In the West African Gallery, there is a bust of an African man's head that was, I think it was created around 2015. And why it's there in the West African Gallery is because the creator used the exact same techniques that were used during the medieval period to create this bust. And as far as I know, he did that to prove that those techniques were in fact used to create the artifacts that are there. So yeah, just adding that to Robin's original answer.
A question from Josephine, which concerns the course. And she's asking, is the course you're offering at the discount price for the same course you usually have, which outlines what is in your book when we roll and other information?
Yeah, in a word, yes. When we ruled was written in 2006 and updated, I think, in 2014 or something like that. The course is updated from that. So there's plenty of content on the course that's not in when we ruled. So when we ruled, about half the content which we put on the site is based on when we ruled, and the other half is all the updates since then, including the updates where we're dealing with wealth education, which of course is not in when we ruled.
Okay, Sarah, you have your hand raised.
Yeah, I just wanted to say, there seem to be a lot of people here that are maybe thinking about looking at the course. I started at the beginning of January. I've been looking for about 18 months for an African history course, an online course, but nothing really fitted the bill until I found this. And it's incredible. Yeah, kind of words fail me. It's so thorough. It covers so much. I'm not quite sure when I'm going to finish. But yeah, so if you're thinking about doing it, do it. That's all I can say. And Robin has quite an idiosyncratic presentation style, which I love.
Thank you very much for that, Sarah. Yeah. All I can add to that is that this is really the beginning. We've got more in store for you. So if you join us, you're going to get exactly what Sarah's talked about. The best, most detailed, most comprehensive Black history and African heritage course online. And we've only just got started. We've got more in store for you. Patrick Lard also added, I've tried to get your book, but was sold out on Amazon. I think he's referring to When We Rule, because of course, all of your other books are on Amazon.
There is a website that I've just created called theblackhistoryman.com. And When We Ruled is available from that site. What I'll do is I'll find the link and I'll put the link up there. But yes, the book is still live. Yeah.
Right.
Do you want to do the next one, George? Or?
Okay.
Right, I was going to, yeah, sorry, you go for it. You go for it.
Yeah, so Andrew's question is, I think we need to know African people inhabited Scotland for centuries and centuries, and they were never slaves. They were free people. They were people and noble people, and the artifacts, cloth, etc. will still be there. However, the European would always turn the real story on its head and depict them as enslaved people. Robin, any comments? I have a few comments on that.
Yeah, there was a Scottish scholar called David McRitchie who did a book called The Testament of Tradition and Ancient and Modern Britons, Volumes 1 and 2. And presumably, that's the source of that kind of information. I welcome any new scholarship that people can put together to update and address these hidden chapters of Black history.
Yeah, just to add to that, I've got those books by David McRitchie, and they're very detailed, and they don't just deal with what you're talking about, Andrew, is the idea of I think it's Princess Scotia, who actually was said to come from ancient Egypt. And some people link that to around the time of Akhenaten. And it's supposed to be during one of those periods when there was like major upheaval and people actually went out of Egypt. It's well known that the Phoenicians actually came over to the UK because they had connections with the tin mines here. So we had people from that particular region, the Phoenicians, who at that point were Black or a mixed population, who had contact with the UK the British Isles. So they were here. And then this story about Scotia was about her people moving up to the Highlands, basically, in Scotland, and founding sort of like the early, Scottish kingdoms there. Interestingly, I went to university with a Scottish guy who it was quite interesting. All I would say was that he was certain, and he was the whitest looking person you could possibly imagine. But he was confident, and he was telling me, and this was before I read MacRitchie's stuff, that there were black people in Scotland from a very long time, and that many of the Celtic nations were in fact of a black origin. If you read MacRitchie's books, he talks about two types of blacks. One that would resemble us, and another that would resemble sort of like people from Hawaii or Southeast, what do you call it, like Polynesians, typically Polynesian-looking dark-skinned people. The term Swarthy was used a lot. And it's not just one wave, we're talking about multiple waves. That's the ancient wave. There's a medieval wave, which is the Moors. They were here as well. And the works that they did. There is, believe it or not, a Danish wave. He talks about Danish people who were fundamentally black. It's an incredible book if you want to go into that. But there's a lot of work to be done in terms of like sort of like cataloging and bringing that information to the fore. A lot of the stuff about the Moors, they can't, as Robin has previously said about the Moors, they can't do anything about their presence in Spain and in Portugal. They try and cover it up in terms of like Italy, but there's evidence of that there. They try and cover it up in terms of Germany. They were there in Germany. Switzerland, the Moors were there as well, but they don't want people to know about this. So they don't really talk about these things. MacRitchie exposes some of that in terms of like their influence, even in the medieval period, in the British Isles as well. So there's a lot of work to uncover and to put together as well. They've tried to cover a lot of things up, like the stuff that Robin's just exposed today. It's all been covered up, and we're exposing that. Yeah.
Superb, thank you. Just a few more messages. Dawn says the course is excellent. There is a wealth of information. Thank you, Dawn. Justina says, hi, Robin. I work for Barnet Libraries and would love to invite you. How do I get hold of your details? I subscribe to the Black Secret.
Yeah, write to us at the Black Secret.
Yeah, I think it's info at the Black Secret, yes?
Yeah.
And L Full says, Robin, are you familiar with Dr. Marie Charles' teaching magazines?
I haven't seen her magazines, but I've seen one of her presentations. And she's coming interesting. Let's just put it like that. Her focus is on early Black people in Britain. And yeah, she's coming radical. You know, I mean, there's no way or no way of buttering it up. She's coming radical.
Just hold on a second, people.
Okay. George is going to his book collection.
Yeah, behind me, I have an extensive book collection. You can't see it, it's kind of like offside.
George has got a serious book collection. Okay, to your right, a couple of inches. Excellent.
Yeah.
What your school will never teach you. Moorish Britain. August, September 2022, Early Black History. Wow. Who the author? I can see a red label, but I can't read it.
It is Dr. Maria Charles and
okay.
Professor Bill Boyle. Now, it's just at the bottom there.
Yeah.
What she's really good at doing and what she highlights are some of the smaller artifacts which have been found going back to the medieval period and slightly earlier. So we're talking post-Roman period to the medieval period. And many of these things have been overlooked. They have a distinct Black countenance. Some of these are very small. And what she's done is she's documented a lot of these. And she's observed that, you know, in terms of like the names, and again, it's kind of like a follow-on to what like MacRitchie was talking about. By the way, Mac Ritchie, you should know, if you read that book, he's anti-black. But it's useful for us. And the reason why many people reference it is, you see, he was a white Scotsman, and he hated the fact that many of the historical Scottish people, as far as he was concerned, the research that he had done, were black or of black origin. So he hated that fact. So he went to extreme lengths to prove that these were not his people. So it is useful for us from that particular standpoint. The information is fantastic, but you will have to go through. He cusses down the Danish princes who have black countenances, and so on and so forth. He talks about the black and the red Douglases, the idea that as time goes on, they actually marry into European royalty, the Normans and so forth. So their blood becomes diluted. So instead of being black, they are like Americans would have like the term red bone. So they become fair-skinned and so on and so forth. So there are all of these terms and associations as well. But her books are really good. She has an amazing eye for capturing these details. And it's all stuff which has been recorded, is available in museums, but has been mislabeled. There's a lot of stuff which has been mislabeled, you know, and that's the work that Robin and ourselves are also doing, because the information is out there, but it's been intentionally misrepresented. So she's been doing a fantastic job as far as that's concerned.
Excellent. Thank you, George. A couple of comments from Rawl. Says, I started the course long ago, but don't have a regular pattern of study, so I have a lot of catching up to do. I have just reached the secret history of the writing of Black history. So much enjoying it, I just rewind and go over it again and again. Also said that I have 7 of Marie Charles's books. So
respect, bro. Respect.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
and that's again, one of the benefits of the course as well, because it's recorded, so you can go back to it over and over again. You know, there is so much to our history, you know, and we've tried to make the experience as user-friendly as possible. You can watch it as many times as you want. That's the whole point.
Yeah.
Good evening. Can you hear me now?
Yes. Who are we listening to? Sorry.
Sorry, my name's Patrick.
Oh, hi, Patrick. Yes.
Sorry, I apologize for that. Anyway.
No problem. Thank you.
I'd like to send greetings to everybody, and it's been taking me about an hour just to get myself to unmute.
Well done. Well done.
To enjoy Joy's presentation, Dr. Robin, Dr. Walker. So thank you for that. Like I said, I've been trying to get your book, and Amazon has sold out. So I'm glad that you sent me a link so I can go directly to get the book, because I did get your precursor book, which I have, but I didn't get the main book. But I'm glad I can get access to that now.
Yeah, it's available, sir.
Okay. I'm also enjoying your course, by the way.
Thank you very much.
I haven't studied as much as I would like to, but I'm definitely on the bandwagon now. And then also, as the brother spoke about Dr. Charles, I've been following her as well. So I'm on the path of understanding a lot more about Black culture, especially Black culture within the United Kingdom, which I think is very relevant to myself, because of course my last name is Laird. So that's always bothered me. So where does that come from? It's not no slave master gave me that name. That's Lord, isn't it? No, it doesn't work out. So, but anyway, I thank you for your work. Please carry on, and hopefully, I will progress with your course. Thank you very much.
Big respect, sir.
Before you go, I say thank you for posting the article in the chat, and I look forward to it. I'm sure you've been hearing it's provoked much discussion. Something about they call it the Glen Afrique.
Yes.
Can you shed any light on that?
Well, I think the lady that came on and discussed it about the so-called
that was Sarah. Yeah.
The Ethiopians. I think that's a lot of codswallop, tell the truth.
Okay.
As one of the brothers said now, because there was a presence of so-called cultural awareness within the so-called British Isles from our forefathers from Africa. So, for that now, that's interesting. because that's what I was discussing before I came onto this meeting. I was discussing with a friend of mine who's doing a similar study. Where does the name come from? You know, Glen Afrique. So the only thing that I understand is that Glen means like a valley. So Afrique, of course, because of Africa. Well, of course, Africa is spelled with a K-A, meaning the soul, the spirit of the Black people, as they say, you know, from Africa. So I need to look more into it. But I think this is probably a study that probably needs to be done.
Absolutely.
I also noticed now that the actual company called Fabergé, is it Fabergé? It's in the link. They are doing the research into producing the so-called material, the tartar material. So I'm thinking to myself, okay, what do they know? So I'm going to try and do some more study.
What do they know?
Originally, and find out who the people, because it might also, one of the things that was mentioned now, right? What family did it belong to? Because, you know, tartan are specific to a family. Now, if we know that that belongs to a particular Moorish family, or as you mentioned now, Ethiopian family, then we can find out more detail. Anyway, I will work on that, and I will feed back any information that I find.
Thank you, Patrick. The information you've just shared about Fabergé getting in, this is why we need to get in terms of knowledge of because Fabergé will, what will they do with it? They will make economics out of it. They will make profit out of it while squashing our contribution to it.
Well, that's what they've always done. They've always gone to like,
and that's why
Africa, India, and copied the fabric that indigenous people have done, and then they say, "Oh, this is our idea," and make millions and millions, as you said.
And that's why another reason why it's important that we know our history, so that we can monetize it. But we monetize it without diminishing the culture, without diminishing the culture that it has produced that material or whatever products are produced, that we produce and we monetize with the full cultural representation of the products that we've created.
On that point, I was reading something, just a quick one, that when Elizabeth Taylor started Cleopatra, she took that jewelry that she wore, right, from ancient Kemet, and she made it her own. She monetized it, and she sold a killing worth of.
Oh yeah, when she passed, yeah, a lot of her jewelry was sold. But hey, she didn't steal it; she loaned it.
In it.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Any more in the chat?
If we don't have any more questions, I think, can we ask Chuck to close us out, probably. Chuck, if you're there.
I'm here. I'm loving it. I'm loving it. I just want to again reiterate what I said before.
Chuck, I'm going to interrupt you because people on the call don't know who you are. So do you want to just give a brief who you are and what your connection is with the Black Secret?
Yeah, well, I'm certainly on board with the Black Secret. I'm just a face in the crowd, to tell you the truth. A brother that has a genuine love for history, particularly the history of African heritage people. I created a public television series back in the 1990s called Harambe, and I had the honor of interviewing Dr. John Henry Clark, a Kenyan scholar, Dr. Ali Mazrui, Molefi Asante, who started the first doctoral program of African-American studies anywhere on earth, Dr. Yosef Ben-Yekinen. I got a chance to interview Dr. Ben in his home, Malana Karenga. So I've had a love for our history for a very long time, and got hung up in the corporate sector, trying to bring home the bacon, and kind of got away from it. But the Black Secret and Robin's book has kind of reinvigorated me and thrust me back into going back into all the books that I had read back in the 90s, Cheikh Anta Diop's books, Dr. Ben's, Dr. Clark's, Ivan Van Sertima, and now the Black Secret. this book here that this brother put it together. And I've been bragging on him ever since I discovered him. You know, I figured if the Europeans could say that Columbus discovered America, I can make a claim to Robin Walker that I discovered his book. But I just can't say enough about it. And I'm looking forward to getting Robin on tape, so to speak, and getting the Black Secret more exposure. There's so much knowledge that you folks have put together that I'm anxious to get out there, particularly it's Black History Month here in the United States. I know you folks had yours in the UK when a couple of months ago was your Black History Month, October. And so I'd like to get a lot of that. I'm going to definitely disseminate this presentation, but I'd like to get in the weeds a little bit more with Robin and you folks in the very near future and get some more information out there.
Because we're going to be doing a series of programs with yourself,
yes,
which we very much look forward to. And yeah, we'll make it available to the people. Thank you.
Fantastic. Well, all I can say is just keep up the good work.
Thank you very much, sir.
Thank you.
Yeah, likewise, Chuck. Likewise.
So unless there's anything else, then I think it's time to wrap this up. Okay, I'm going to count it down. 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Thank you all for taking the time out to attend this. Robin, I'm going to leave the closure to you, sir.
All right, thank you for coming out to the session, and check us out, www.theblacksecret.co.uk. Join us and subscribe. Thank you very much. I'm out.
Have a great time till the next time.